The cold prairie wind carried the last traces of Beatrice Nielsen's screams across the Kansas plains, as the auction block fell silent under the pale pink of dawn. 20 years old, with eyes like wild honey and hair the color of wheat, she had become just another piece of property in a world where women had fewer rights than cattle. The year was 1878, and the West was still wild enough that lawlessness thrived in the spaces between settlements. Beatrice's father had died owing money to men who collected debts with violence, and her mother had succumbed to consumption the previous winter. Alone and penniless, Beatrice had traveled west with promises of work as a teacher, only to be drugged, kidnapped, and brought to this makeshift auction site miles from the nearest town. Sold. The auctioneer's gavel came down with finality as Beatrice struggled against the ropes binding her wrists. To Mr. Harrington for the sum of $80. Jasper Harrington, owner of the Paradise Saloon in the nearby town of Redemption Creek, smiled a yellowed smile as he approached to claim his purchase. His reputation preceded him. Girls who worked for Harrington rarely lasted more than a few years before being used up and discarded. "You'll make a fine addition to my establishment," he said, grabbing her by the arm. "Got some pretty dresses waiting. Men pay extra for educated girls who can talk fancy." Beatrice spat in his face. "I would rather die." The back of his hand connected with her cheek, snapping her head to the side. "That can be arranged too if you prefer, but it would be a waste of my investment." Miles away, in a small ranch nestled against the foothills, Samuel Vaughn woke with a start. The dream had come again, a woman calling for help, her face unclear but her desperation palpable. At 32, Sam was no stranger to the harshness of the frontier. 10 years as a Texas Ranger, followed by 5 years running his own modest cattle operation, had hardened him in ways that showed in the lines around his eyes and the permanent set of his jaw. Rubbing his eyes, he rose and moved to the window. His ranch hands would be expecting him soon to begin the day's work, yet something tugged at him, an uneasiness he couldn't shake. It was then that Joshua, his foreman, burst through the door without knocking. "Sam, just got word there was an illegal auction at dawn." Harrington bought himself another girl. Sam's hands balled into fists. After his sister had disappeared 3 years ago, only to be found dead outside a brothel in Abilene, he'd made it his mission to put a stop to the trafficking of women in the territory. Where? Miller's abandoned farm. They'll have moved her to the Paradise by now. Sam was already reaching for his gun belt. "Get the horses ready." In the Paradise Saloon, Beatrice fought with every ounce of strength as 2 women dressed in tawdry finery attempted to wrestle her into a corseted red dress. Her own modest traveling clothes had been taken, leaving her in only her undergarments. "Stop fighting, honey," said the older woman, whose painted face couldn't hide the weariness in her eyes. "You'll just make it worse for yourself." "I am not property," Beatrice hissed. "I was a schoolteacher in Boston. My father was a minister." The younger woman, barely older than Beatrice herself, laughed bitterly. "And I was a banker's daughter from Chicago. Doesn't matter out here." Harrington appeared in the doorway. "Is she ready?" "Got a customer already wants to meet our new girl." "Go to hell," Beatrice said, earning another slap. "She'll be ready in an hour," the older woman promised. "She better be," Harrington warned, then looked at Beatrice. "The fight will leave you soon enough. They all surrender eventually." Left alone for a moment, Beatrice frantically searched the room for anything she could use as a weapon. Finding nothing, she ran to the window and looked out. The second-story drop was too high, and even if she survived it, where would she go? The nearest town was Redemption Creek itself, and from what she'd gathered, Harrington practically owned it. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Beatrice sank to the floor and did something she hadn't done since her mother died. She prayed. Sam and his 3 most trusted men rode hard toward Redemption Creek, the hooves of their horses kicking up dust clouds visible for miles. As the former lawman of the territory, Sam had numerous allies, but just as many enemies. The law had grown too corrupt to trust, with sheriffs and judges bought off by men like Harrington. "What's the plan?" asked Joshua, his weathered face serious beneath his wide-brimmed hat. "We scope out the Paradise, find where they're keeping her." Wait until dusk when the place gets busy, then we make our move. And if Harrington puts up a fight, Sam's eyes hardened, then we give him one. By mid-afternoon, the Paradise Saloon was beginning to come alive. Piano music drifted up from the main floor as men fresh from the cattle drives and mining camps filtered in, looking for whiskey and company. Beatrice, now dressed in the gaudy red gown that exposed more than it covered, sat rigidly on a chaise in the corner of the main saloon while Harrington introduced her to various patrons. "This here's our new girl, Beatrice. Educated back east, reads poetry and such." The men looked at her like wolves eyeing a wounded deer. Beatrice kept her face impassive, but her mind raced. If she could just get to the door, maybe she could run. But to where, and how far would she get before they caught her? "When do we get to sample the new merchandise, Harrington?" asked a portly man with a heavy silver watch chain. "All in good time, Judge, all in good time. Tonight's just for getting acquainted." Beatrice felt bile rise in her throat at the thought. As the afternoon wore on, more men filtered through to leer at her, some offering Harrington exorbitant sums for the honor of being her first customer. Each time he deferred, promising that the bidding would begin at nightfall. Outside the Paradise, Sam and his men had positioned themselves strategically around the building. From his vantage point in the livery stable across the street, Sam could see most of the comings and goings. The news that Harrington had acquired a new girl had spread, bringing a particularly rough crowd to town. "I count 15 men inside, plus Harrington and his bouncer," reported Will, the youngest of Sam's ranch hands, returning from a reconnaissance mission. "The girl's in the main saloon, but they've got someone watching her every second." Sam nodded, his jaw tightening. "Any sign of the sheriff drinking at the bar, he won't be a problem. He's 3 sheets to the wind already." "Good, we wait until dusk. When the crowd is at its peak, they'll be too distracted to notice us slipping in the back." The hours crawled by, each minute feeling like an eternity to Beatrice. She had managed to avoid being pawed by pretending to feel faint whenever any man got too close, which amused rather than angered them. Harrington, however, was growing impatient. "You'll entertain these gentlemen properly or you'll regret it," he whispered in her ear during one such episode. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, Beatrice felt her time running out. The saloon was packed now, and Harrington had announced that the special event would begin at dusk. She understood all too well what that meant. A commotion at the bar caught her attention, 2 minors arguing over a card game. As the men around her turned to watch the developing fight, Beatrice saw her chance. Slipping from the chaise, she edged toward the back stairs, hoping to find a service entrance or window from which she might escape. She had nearly reached the stairs when a rough hand grabbed her arm. "Where do you think you're going, pretty thing?" The speaker was a trail boss with liquor on his breath and lust in his eyes. "I just needed some air," Beatrice stammered. "I'll give you something better than air," he leered, pulling her toward him. Beatrice's scream was lost in the general cacophony of the saloon, as the card game dispute erupted into a full-fledged brawl. Taking advantage of the confusion, she wrenched free and dashed up the stairs, her heart pounding. Outside, the sunset painted the sky in deepening shades of orange and purple as Sam observed the growing chaos inside the Paradise. The brawl provided the perfect distraction. "Now," he said to his men, "Joshua and Will take the back, Tom and I will go through the front. Remember, we're here for the girl. No unnecessary risks." They moved as one, years of working cattle together having honed their ability to communicate without words. Sam entered through the swinging doors, his tall frame and stern expression enough to part the crowd before him. The fight was still raging at the bar, with the sheriff too drunk to intervene. Sam scanned the room quickly, but saw no sign of a new girl matching the description they'd been given. "She must be upstairs," he muttered to Tom, then caught sight of Harrington pushing through the crowd toward the stairs, his face contorted with rage. "Someone find that girl," Harrington bellowed. "She's run off." Sam and Tom exchanged glances, then moved toward the staircase. If the girl was making a break for it, they needed to reach her before Harrington did. Upstairs, Beatrice had found herself in a hallway lined with doors. Behind each, she could hear sounds of the business being conducted. She tried a window at the end of the hall, but it had been nailed shut. Hearing footsteps pounding up the stairs, she darted into an empty room and looked frantically for a place to hide. The room appeared to be Harrington's office, with a large desk and several cabinets. Beatrice spotted another door and rushed toward it, only to find it locked. The footsteps were getting closer. In desperation, she grabbed a heavy paperweight from the desk and positioned herself behind the door, ready to strike whoever entered. The door burst open, and Beatrice swung with all her might. The paperweight connected with a solid thud, and a man grunted in pain. But as he turned, she realized it wasn't Harrington. This man was taller, broader, with intense blue eyes now widened in surprise. "Who are you?" she demanded, still holding the paperweight ready for another blow. "Someone who's trying to help," he said, one hand raised placatingly while the other rubbed his shoulder where she'd hit him. "Name's Samuel Vaughn. My friends and I have come to get you out of here." Beatrice hesitated, suspicion warring with desperate hope. "Why would you help me?" "Because no one should be sold like cattle," he said simply. "Now, we don't have much time. Harrington and his men are searching the building." As if to emphasize his point, a shout came from down the hall. "Check the office." Sam moved quickly, crossing to the window and working at the nails with a knife from his belt. "What's your name?" he asked as he worked. Beatrice Nielsen." "Well, Miss Nielsen, I hope you're not afraid of heights." With a final wrench, the window came free. Sam looked out, then back at her. "There's a balcony about 10 feet down. Think you can make that jump?" Beatrice glanced down at the constraining dress. "Not in this." Without hesitation, she reached down and tore the skirt up the side, creating a slit that would allow her to move more freely. Sam's eyes widened briefly, then he nodded with approval. "Good thinking." The office door rattled as someone tried the handle. Sam had locked it behind him, but it wouldn't hold for long. "Time to go," he said, helping Beatrice onto the windowsill. She looked down at the balcony below, then at the man beside her. There was something in his eyes, a steadiness, a certainty that made her trust him despite every reason not to. "If you're tricking me, I'll kill you myself," she warned. Sam actually smiled at that. "I believe you would." Then more seriously, "I give you my word, Miss Nielsen, I'm taking you home." The door splintered behind them as Harrington's bouncer began to break it down. Without further hesitation, Beatrice jumped. The fall seemed to last forever, but then her feet hit the wooden balcony with a jarring impact. Sam landed beside her seconds later, steadying her with a hand on her elbow. "This way," he said, leading her to where a rope had been secured to the railing. "My men are below." True to his word, 2 men waited in the alley behind the saloon. They helped Beatrice down the rope, then quickly guided her to where horses waited. "Where's Tom?" Sam asked as he reached the ground. "Creating a diversion," Joshua replied. "Said he'd meet us at the crossing." Sam nodded, then turned to Beatrice. "Can you ride?" "I grew up in Boston," she said. "The closest I've come to a horse is a carriage." Without further discussion, Sam lifted her onto his own horse, then mounted behind her. "Hold tight," he instructed, one arm securing her while the other held the reins. "It's going to be a fast ride." They galloped out of town as shots rang out behind them. Beatrice clung to the saddle horn, feeling the powerful animal beneath them and the solid warmth of the man at her back. She didn't know who he was or why he had risked his life to save her, but for the first time since dawn, she felt a flicker of hope. The night closed around them as they rode hard across the prairie. Behind them, Redemption Creek receded into darkness, but Beatrice knew the danger was far from over. Harrington was not a man who would easily accept the loss of his investment. As for the cowboy, whose strong arms held her steady, he remained a mystery, but one she was suddenly very eager to solve. The rhythmic pounding of hooves carried them through the darkness, the stars overhead their only witness as they fled toward whatever sanctuary Samuel Vaughn had promised. Beatrice found herself leaning back against him, exhaustion finally catching up to her now that the immediate danger had passed. "Stay awake, Miss Nielsen," Sam said near her ear, his voice low but firm. "We're not safe yet." They rode for what seemed like hours, following a stream that wound through the rolling prairie. Occasionally, Sam would signal a halt, listening intently for sounds of pursuit, but each time they pressed on. The other 2 men flanked them, vigilant shadows in the moonlight. "Where are we going?" Beatrice finally asked, her throat dry from the dusty air. My ranch. It's about 15 miles from Redemption Creek. We should be there before midnight. And then what? Sam was silent for a moment. Then we figure out how to keep you safe from Harrington. He won't give up easily. Why are you doing this? You don't know me, she felt rather than saw his shrug. Let's just say I have my reasons for disliking men who trade in women's lives. Before she could press further, a horseman appeared on the ridge ahead. Sam instantly reached for his gun, but then relaxed as the rider approached. Tom, he said with relief. Any trouble? Started a fire in the storeroom, Tom reported with a grin. By the time they put it out, we'll be long gone, but Harrington was gathering men for a search party when I left. Sam nodded grimly. Then we'd best not dawdle. Let's cut through Carson's Pass, it'll save us an hour. The path grew steeper as they entered a rugged area where limestone outcroppings jutted from the earth like the bones of ancient beasts. Beatrice held tightly to the saddle as the horse picked its way carefully along the narrow trail. One misstep in the dark could mean a deadly fall. Almost through, Sam assured her as they reached the highest point of the pass. From their vantage point, Beatrice could see the vast expanse of prairie stretching below, silvered by moonlight. In the distance, a cluster of lights marked what she assumed must be Sam's ranch. So close to safety, yet still so vulnerable, as they began their descent, a shot rang out, the bullet whizzing past Beatrice's ear. Sam instantly pulled her closer, shielding her with his body as he urged the horse into a gallop. Ambush, he shouted to the others. Ride hard. More shots followed, echoing against the rock walls. Beatrice's heart pounded as Sam swerved and dodged, making them a difficult target. She caught glimpses of riders in pursuit, 3, maybe 4 men. Harrington's men, Sam confirmed when she asked. They must have guessed we'd take the pass. They emerged from the canyon with the pursuers still behind them, though the distance had widened. The flat prairie offered less cover but allowed for greater speed. Sam's ranch was visible now, perhaps 2 miles ahead. We'll make for the house, Sam told his men. Joshua, ride ahead and alert the others. We may have a fight on our hands. Joshua spurred his horse forward, quickly outdistancing them. Tom dropped back slightly, turning in his saddle to fire at their pursuers, forcing them to scatter. Can your men hold them off? Beatrice asked, acutely aware of how much danger she had brought to these strangers. My ranch hands are former rangers like me, Sam replied. They can handle themselves, and they're loyal. The ranch grew larger as they approached a substantial main house with several outbuildings and corrals. Lights were being lit in every window, and Beatrice could see men with rifles taking positions. They thundered into the yard, and Sam immediately dismounted, then helped Beatrice down. Her legs nearly buckled after the long ride, but he steadied her. Get inside, he urged, guiding her toward the house. Mrs. Holloway will look after you. An older woman appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. Her expression was concerned but not frightened. Another one, Sam, she asked, eyeing Beatrice's torn and disheveled saloon dress. She needs clothes and food, Mrs. Holloway, and maybe a hot bath if there's time. There's always time for basic decency, the housekeeper replied firmly, taking Beatrice's arm. Come along, dear, let's get you sorted while the men deal with the trouble. Beatrice hesitated, looking back at Sam. Be careful, she found herself saying. He nodded, something warming in his eyes despite the tension of the moment. Go on now, you'll be safe here. Inside, the ranch house was surprisingly comfortable, with solid furniture and clean, if simple, decor. Mrs. Holloway quickly ushered Beatrice into a bedroom and began pulling clothes from a chest. These belonged to Sam's sister, she explained. Should fit you well enough. His sister, Mrs. Holloway's face clouded. She passed 3 years ago, terrible business. It's what drove him to leave the Rangers and start his crusade against the trafficking rings. So that explained his determination to rescue her. Beatrice felt a pang of sympathy, wondering what had happened to the sister, but knowing now wasn't the time to ask. As she changed into a simple cotton dress, Beatrice heard shots outside. Mrs. Holloway calmly poured water into a basin for her to wash with. Don't you worry, the older woman said. Sam and his men know what they're doing. This isn't the first time they've brought trouble home with them. The shooting stopped after a few minutes, replaced by the sound of hoofbeats retreating into the distance. Shortly afterward, Sam appeared in the doorway, his face grim but satisfied. "They're gone for now," he reported. "2 wounded, but they all rode off. They'll be back with more men, though." "How much time do we have?" Beatrice asked. "Until morning, at least. Harrington will need to gather more men than he had tonight." Sam leaned against the doorframe, suddenly looking weary. "Mrs. Holloway, is there any of that stew left?" "I'll bring some for both of you," the housekeeper said, bustling out. Left alone with her rescuer for the first time, Beatrice studied him properly. Samuel Vaughn was tall and broad-shouldered, with the lean, muscular build of a man who worked hard for his living. His face was tanned from the sun, with lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of both laughter and hardship. Dark hair in need of a trim curled at his collar, and a short beard covered his jaw. But it was his eyes that held her attention, clear blue and direct, with an intensity that made her feel as though he could see right through her. "Thank you," she said simply. "For saving me." Sam shook his head. "Don't thank me yet. You're still in danger as long as Harrington thinks he has a claim on you." "He doesn't," Beatrice said fiercely. "I am not property to be bought and sold." "No," Sam agreed, "you're not, but men like Harrington don't see it that way. And out here, sometimes might makes right, regardless of what the law says." "So what happens now?" Mrs. Holloway returned with 2 bowls of stew and fresh bread before Sam could answer. He waited until they were both seated at the small table in the corner of the room before continuing. "We have a few options. I could try to get you to the railroad at Council Grove. It's a 2-day ride. From there, you could head back east." Beatrice considered this as she ate. The stew was hearty and delicious, reminding her that she hadn't eaten properly since before the auction. "Is that what the other women did?" "The ones Mrs. Holloway mentioned," Sam nodded. "Most of them, yes. Some had family to return to." "I don't," Beatrice admitted. "My parents are gone. I came west because a placement agency in Boston promised teaching positions in frontier towns." "A common tactic," Sam said bitterly. "These traffickers have agents in eastern cities looking for vulnerable women. They promise respectable work, then sell the women to brothels once they're isolated out here. How many have you rescued?" 7 so far this year. "Though you're the first we've taken directly from Harrington. Which is why he'll be especially determined to get me back," Beatrice realized. "It's not just about the money, it's his pride." Sam nodded, impressed by her quick understanding. "Exactly, plus word is already spreading. If he lets this stand, other girls might try to escape." They ate in silence for a moment, both contemplating the gravity of the situation. Finally, Beatrice set down her spoon. "I won't run back east with my tail between my legs," she declared. "I came west to build a new life, and I still intend to do that." "It's not safe for you here," Sam argued. "Not with Harrington gunning for you." "Then we'll have to make it safe," Beatrice countered. "You said yourself that he operates outside the law, so the law won't help us." "But surely there must be a way to stop him permanently." Sam studied her with new respect. Most of the women he rescued were too traumatized to think of anything but escape, but Beatrice Nielsen had a fighter's spirit. "There might be a way," he said slowly, "but it would be dangerous. And it would require you to stay here at the ranch while we prepare." "What kind of danger?" "The kind that comes with setting a trap for a wolf like Harrington." Sam leaned forward. "I've been gathering evidence against him and his operation for months. Names, dates, financial records. With enough proof, even the corrupt officials in this territory couldn't ignore it. And what would my role be in this plan?" "Bait," Sam admitted reluctantly. "Word would spread that you're here. Harrington would come for you with everything he has. And when he does, we'd be ready with enough witnesses and evidence to finally bring him down." Beatrice considered this. "So I would be putting myself in danger to help not just myself, but all the other women he might target in the future." "That's the idea, but I won't lie to you, it's risky. Harrington is connected. He has men in his pocket from here to Topeka." "So do you," Beatrice pointed out. "I saw how your men fought for you tonight. That kind of loyalty doesn't come from nowhere." Sam smiled slightly. "They're good men, but we'd still be outnumbered." "Quality over quantity," Beatrice said with determination. "I'll do it." "You should sleep on it," Sam advised, standing to leave. "It's been a long day, and tomorrow won't be any easier. The guest room is yours for as long as you need it. Beatrice stood as well. Mr. Vaughn, Sam, please. Sam, she amended. I won't change my mind. I was raised to believe that evil thrives when good people do nothing. I have a chance to do something, and I intend to take it. He looked at her for a long moment, and Beatrice felt something pass between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits. Very well, he said at last. We'll start planning tomorrow, but for now, rest. You're safe here tonight. As he turned to leave, Beatrice called after him. Sam. Thank you for coming for me at dusk. I don't know how you knew, but thank you. He paused in the doorway. Get some sleep, Miss Nielsen. Tomorrow we'll be here before you know it. As the door closed behind him, Beatrice sat on the edge of the bed, her mind whirling with the events of the day. From the horror of the auction block at dawn to the sanctuary of this ranch, at night, her life had transformed completely in the span of a single day. And at the center of that transformation stood Samuel Vaughn, a cowboy with a mission and eyes that seemed to see into her soul. Despite her exhaustion, sleep was slow to come. When it did, her dreams were a confused jumble of pursuit and rescue, with Sam's face appearing again and again as her protector. By the time dawn broke over the prairie, painting the sky in the same pink hues that had witnessed her sail, Beatrice was already awake and resolved. Whatever plan Sam proposed, she would see it through. Not just for herself, but for all the women who had been or might be trapped as she had been. She dressed in the borrowed clothes, a simple blue dress that was slightly too large but serviceable, and went in search of breakfast. The main part of the house was already bustling with activity. Ranch hands came and went from the kitchen, where Mrs. Holloway was serving up plates of eggs, bacon, and biscuits. The men nodded respectfully to Beatrice but asked no questions, which she appreciated. Sam was at the large table in the dining room, maps and papers spread before him. He looked up when she entered, and for a moment, Beatrice caught an unguarded expression on his face, something warm and almost tender that disappeared quickly behind his usual composed demeanor. You're up early, he said, gathering the papers. Did you sleep well? Well enough, she answered, taking the seat he indicated. Have Harrington's men returned? Not yet, but we've posted lookouts. We'll have warning when they come. He poured her a cup of coffee from the pot on the table. I've been thinking about our situation. It's not as simple as just gathering evidence. I didn't think it would be, Beatrice replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. The rich aroma reminded her of mornings in her father's house before everything had fallen apart. Tell me what you're planning. Sam hesitated, studying her. Are you sure about this? It's not too late to reconsider heading east, I'm sure. Beatrice met his gaze steadily. I want to help stop Harrington, not just for myself, but for all the women he's hurt. Something like admiration flickered in Sam's eyes. All right then, here's what I'm thinking. Over breakfast, he laid out his plan. The key was to get irrefutable evidence of Harrington's operation, not just the brothel, which was technically legal if distasteful, but the trafficking and forced prostitution, which violated federal law. To do this, they needed documentation and witnesses willing to testify. I've been collecting affidavits from women who escaped Harrington's brothels, Sam explained. But it's not enough. We need financial records showing he's purchasing women, and we need witnesses to the actual transactions. Like the men who sold me, Beatrice realized. Exactly. One of them is a man named Dexter. He works as a middleman, connecting the Eastern recruiters with Western buyers like Harrington. I've been tracking him for months, but he's slippery. How do I fit into this plan? Harrington will come for you. When he does, we'll be ready. But while he's focused on getting you back, I can send men to raid his office at the Paradise. If we can get his ledgers and correspondence, we'll have what we need. Beatrice nodded slowly. So I'm the distraction. But won't he expect something like that? He might, Sam admitted. Which is why we need to be unpredictable. He'll expect us to fortress up here at the ranch. Instead, I'm thinking of moving you to a different location somewhere he wouldn't expect. Where? There's a small cabin near the north pasture. It belonged to the original homesteader before I bought this land. It's isolated but defensible, and most importantly, few people know about it. Mrs. Holloway appeared with plates of food, temporarily halting their conversation. The housekeeper looked at Beatrice with concern. You're too thin, dear. Eat up now, you'll need your strength. Beatrice smiled gratefully and applied herself to the meal, which was indeed delicious. As she ate, she considered Sam's plan. It was dangerous, certainly, but it also made sense. "When do we move to this cabin?" "Tonight," Sam said. "Meanwhile, I'll set things in motion in town. I have contacts there who can help us." "What about your men here at the ranch? Joshua and Tom will come with us to the cabin. The rest will stay here to maintain appearances and protect the ranch." Sam took a sip of his coffee. "There's something else you should know. The territorial marshal arrives in Council Grove tomorrow. He's not in Harrington's pocket, and he's been looking for a reason to investigate him. If we can get the evidence to him quickly, we might finally have the law on our side." Hope bloomed in Beatrice's chest. "Then we really could bring Harrington down." "It's possible," Sam agreed cautiously, "but don't underestimate him. He survived this long because he's clever and ruthless." "So are we," Beatrice said with determination. Sam's mouth curved in a rare full smile that transformed his face. "Yes, Miss Nielsen, I believe we are." After breakfast, Sam took Beatrice on a tour of the ranch. It was larger than she had realized, with several thousand acres of grazing land stretching into the distance. The main house and outbuildings formed a neat complex near a creek that provided water year-round. About 40 cattle grazed in the nearest pasture, with more visible on the hills beyond. "It's beautiful," Beatrice said as they stood on the porch, surveying the landscape. The morning sun illuminated the rolling prairie, turning the grass to gold. "How long have you had this place?" 3 years, Sam replied. "After I left the Rangers, I needed somewhere to start fresh. This land came up for sale when the previous owner died without heirs. It was run down then, but we've built it up." "We," the men who work for me. Most of them were Rangers too, or had similar backgrounds, men who wanted something more peaceful but found civilian life too tame. "And now you use this place as a base for rescuing women from traffickers," Beatrice observed. "Not exactly the peaceful retirement you planned," Sam shrugged. "Some fights choose you. After what happened to my sister, I couldn't just look the other way." Beatrice wanted to ask about his sister, but sensed it was still a raw subject. Instead, she said, "You're a good man, Samuel Vaughn." He looked uncomfortable with the praise. "I'm just doing what needs doing. Come on, I'll show you the stables. If we're riding to the cabin tonight, you'll need to be comfortable on a horse." The rest of the morning was spent with Sam patiently teaching Beatrice the basics of horsemanship. She was a quick study, though her muscles protested the unfamiliar activity. By noon, she could mount and dismount on her own and guide her horse, a gentle mare named Daisy, in basic maneuvers. "You're a natural," Sam commented as they walked the horses back to the stable after her lesson. "Hardly," Beatrice laughed, feeling the soreness in her thighs. "But I'm learning." "That's all anyone can do." Sam helped her dismount, his hands strong and steady at her waist. For a moment they stood close, and Beatrice felt a flutter in her stomach that had nothing to do with fear or hunger. Then Sam stepped back, his expression unreadable. "You should rest before lunch. We've got a long night ahead." The afternoon passed quickly. Beatrice took a nap, then helped Mrs. Holloway prepare provisions for their journey to the cabin. The housekeeper also found more clothes that had belonged to Sam's sister, ensuring Beatrice would have practical attire for the days ahead. "Sarah was about your size," Mrs. Holloway commented as she packed the clothes into a saddlebag. "A bit taller, perhaps, but nothing that can't be managed with a belt." "Sarah was Sam's sister?" Beatrice asked carefully. Mrs. Holloway nodded, her face softening with old grief. "Such a bright girl. Wanted to be a doctor, if you can imagine. She went to study in St. Louis, but on her way back for a visit, her stage coach was attacked. The men were killed and the women. She trailed off, then continued more softly. By the time Sam found her, it was too late. The life in those places, it breaks something inside a person." "I'm so sorry," Beatrice said, understanding now the depth of Sam's commitment to his cause. "It must have been devastating for him." "It changed him," Mrs. Holloway agreed. "He was always serious, but there was a lightness to him before. After Sarah, he became harder, more focused, some might say obsessed, with bringing down men like Harrington. Yes, it's good work, important work, but sometimes I worry he's lost himself in it." The older woman gave Beatrice a considering look. "Though he seems different since bringing you here, more like his old self." Before Beatrice could respond to that intriguing observation, Sam appeared in the doorway. "Everything ready?" he asked. "We should leave before sunset." "Just finishing up," Mrs. Holloway assured him. "I've packed enough food for 3 days, clean linens, and some extra clothes for Miss Nielsen." "Good. Joshua and Tom are saddling the horses." Sam turned to Beatrice. "We'll ride single file, keep to the trees and gullies where possible. It's about an hour to the cabin if we take the direct route, but we'll circle around to be safe. Might take closer to 3 hours." "I'm ready," Beatrice said, straightening her borrowed riding skirt. Sam studied her for a moment, then nodded. "You're braver than most men I know, Miss Nielsen." "Beatrice," she corrected him, "if we're going to be hiding out together, I think we can dispense with formalities." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Beatrice, then." They left as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. True to Sam's word, they took a circuitous route, avoiding open ground and keeping to natural features that offered concealment. Joshua led the way, with Beatrice and Sam in the middle, and Tom bringing up the rear. The ride was challenging for Beatrice, her newly acquired skills tested by the rough terrain. But Daisy was patient and steady, following Sam's horse without requiring much guidance. This left Beatrice free to observe their surroundings and her companions. Sam rode with the easy confidence of a man who had spent his life in the saddle. His eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, alert for any sign of danger. Occasionally, he would signal a halt and listen intently before proceeding. His vigilance was reassuring rather than alarming. Here was a man who left nothing to chance. The sun had set, and twilight was deepening into night when they finally approached the cabin. It was smaller than Beatrice had imagined, a simple one-room structure built of logs with a stone chimney. It stood in a small clearing surrounded by cottonwood trees with a creek gurgling nearby. "It's not much," Sam said as they dismounted, "but it's solid and the trees provide good cover." "It's perfect," Beatrice replied honestly. After the events of the past 2 days, any safe harbor seemed like luxury. Joshua and Tom quickly set about securing the perimeter, while Sam helped Beatrice carry their provisions inside. The cabin was sparsely furnished but clean, with a table and chairs, a small stove, a bed in one corner, and a chest for storage. Someone had been here recently. There was no dust, and fresh firewood was stacked beside the stove. "Mrs. Holloway sent one of the hands ahead this morning to prepare the place," Sam explained, seeing her surprise. "She thinks of everything." "She's remarkable," Beatrice agreed, setting her bundle on the table. "So what happens now?" "Now we wait," Sam said, "and prepare. Harrington will have men searching everywhere for you. It might take them a day or two to find this place, but they will. When they do, we need to be ready. And your men in town, the ones getting the evidence from Harrington's office, Will and 2 others. They'll move tonight, while Harrington is distracted with organizing search parties." Beatrice nodded, trying to ignore the flutter of anxiety in her stomach. So much could go wrong with this plan, if Harrington's men found them before Sam's men secured the evidence. If the territorial marshal couldn't be trusted after all, if the evidence itself proved insufficient, Sam seemed to sense her unease. "We've done this before," he said gently. "Maybe not exactly this, but similar operations. My men know what they're doing." "I trust you," Beatrice said, surprising herself with the realization that it was true. Despite knowing him for barely a day, she did trust Samuel Vaughn completely. Something shifted in his expression, a softening around the eyes, a slight parting of the lips as if he might say something significant. But then Joshua entered with firewood, and the moment passed. "Perimeter's secure," Joshua reported. "Tom's taking first watch, no sign of pursuit so far." "Good," Sam nodded. "Let's get a fire going and have some food. It's going to be a long night." As darkness settled fully over the prairie, the 4 of them shared a simple meal of bread, cold meat, and coffee. The conversation was sporadic, focused mainly on practical matters of security and planning. Beatrice found herself studying Sam in the flickering firelight, noticing details she had missed before: a small scar near his right eyebrow, the way one corner of his mouth lifted slightly higher than the other when he almost smiled, the careful precision with which he handled every task. After eating, Joshua took over the watch from Tom, who stretched out on a bedroll near the door and was soon snoring softly. Sam spread a map on the table and beckoned Beatrice to join him. "I want you to understand the layout," he explained, pointing to various markings. "In case we get separated, you need to know where to go." He showed her their current location, the routes back to the ranch, and alternative escape paths if they came under attack. His finger traced lines across the paper, his voice low and steady as he explained terrain features and landmarks. Beatrice leaned close, committing everything to memory. "And if everything goes wrong?" she asked, voicing the question that had been nagging at her. Sam met her eyes directly. "Head here," he indicated a spot on the map marked with a small cross. "It's an old mission. The priest there, Father Ignacio, is a friend. He'll help you get to the territorial capital, where you can speak to Judge Hollister directly. He's honest, and he's been looking for a way to bring down Harrington for years." Beatrice nodded, oddly comforted by the knowledge that Sam had contingency plans even for the worst outcomes. "Thank you for thinking of everything." "Not everything," he admitted, "but as many possibilities as I can." As the night deepened, the cabin grew chilly despite the fire. Beatrice pulled Sarah's shawl closer around her shoulders, trying not to shiver. Sam noticed and frowned. "You should take the bed," he said. "I'll keep watch with the men." "I'm not tired," Beatrice protested, though it wasn't entirely true. The events of the past day and the long ride had taken their toll, but her mind was too active for sleep. "At least sit by the fire," Sam suggested, guiding her to the chair nearest the stove. He added another log, stirring the embers until the flames leaped higher. "Better. Yes, thank you." Beatrice extended her hands toward the warmth. "Will you tell me about yourself, Sam? About your life before all this?" He seemed surprised by the request, but settled onto a stool across from her. "Not much to tell. Grew up on a farm in Missouri. My father fought for the Union, came home changed. Died when I was 16. I worked the farm with my mother and Sarah until mother passed too, then I joined the Rangers. And Sarah went to study medicine," Beatrice prompted gently. Sam's face tightened, but he nodded. "She was always the smart one, got a scholarship to a women's college in St. Louis. She was brilliant, could have been a great doctor. She must have been remarkable to pursue such a path as a woman." "She was," Sam agreed, his voice softening with memories. "Fearless. Even as a child, she never hesitated to stand up for what she believed in." He looked at Beatrice curiously. "You remind me of her in some ways." "I'm honored by the comparison," Beatrice said sincerely. "Though I fear I haven't shown her courage. I came west seeking adventure and independence and instead found myself utterly helpless." "No," Sam shook his head firmly. "You weren't helpless, you fought, you survived, and now you're choosing to stay and fight some more when you could have chosen safety." His gaze held hers. "That's true courage, Beatrice, not fearlessness but acting despite fear." The intensity in his eyes made her heart beat faster. "And what about you? What drives you to keep fighting?" Sam looked into the fire, his expression distant. "At first it was vengeance, pure and simple. I wanted to hurt the men who hurt Sarah, but over time, it changed. I realized there were so many women like her, vulnerable and exploited. And so few people willing to stand up for them. So you became their champion," he smiled ruefully. "I wouldn't put it so grandly, I just do what I can." "It's more than most," Beatrice said softly. They fell into a companionable silence, the fire crackling between them. Outside, the wind whispered through the cottonwoods and somewhere an owl called. Despite the danger that surely pursued them, Beatrice felt an unexpected sense of peace in this moment. "What about you?" Sam asked eventually. "What brought you west besides adventure?" Beatrice considered her answer. "After my father died, there seemed little reason to stay in Boston. His debts took almost everything, and teaching positions for women there are competitive. The advertisement promised good wages and respectability in a place where teachers were scarce." She sighed. It seemed perfect, a chance to be useful and independent. "And it will be," Sam said with quiet certainty. "Once Harrington is dealt with, there's no reason you couldn't teach here. The settlement north of my ranch has been looking for a teacher for months." Beatrice looked up, surprised by the suggestion. "You think I should stay in Kansas?" "I think you should have the choice," Sam replied carefully. "To stay or go, as you please, not driven away by fear or drawn by false promises." There was something in his tone, a hesitancy, perhaps a hope that made Beatrice wonder if he had personal reasons for wanting her to stay. The thought warmed her more than the fire. "I'd like that," she said softly. "The choice, I mean." Sam nodded, his eyes still on hers, something unspoken passing between them. Then Tom stirred in his sleep, breaking the moment, and Sam stood. "You should rest," he said. "Tomorrow may bring challenges we can't predict." Reluctantly, Beatrice moved to the bed, while Sam took a position by the window where he could keep watch. As she settled under the rough blankets, she found herself watching him, his profile outlined against the night, strong and vigilant. In just 2 days, this man had become her protector, her ally, and perhaps something more. With that comforting thought, she finally drifted into sleep. The next morning dawned clear and cool. Beatrice woke to the smell of coffee and bacon, finding Tom at the small stove while Sam and Joshua studied the map and spoke in low voices. She washed quickly with water from the basin, grateful for the simple luxury after the hardships of the previous days. "Any news?" she asked, accepting a tin mug of coffee from Tom. "No sign of pursuit yet," Sam replied, "but it's early. Joshua will ride to the rendezvous point at noon to meet Will and see if they got the evidence. And then, if they were successful, we take everything to the territorial marshal in Council Grove. If not," Sam's expression hardened, "then we move to the backup plan." Beatrice didn't ask what that entailed. Something in his tone suggested it would be more direct and potentially more dangerous. They ate a simple breakfast, then Sam suggested they check their surroundings in daylight. "It's important you know every approach and potential escape route," he explained as they walked the perimeter of the clearing. The morning air was invigorating, filled with the scents of grass and wildflowers. Birds called from the cottonwoods, and insects hummed in the tall prairie grasses. It was hard to believe, in such a peaceful setting, that danger lurked. Yet Beatrice knew better than to be lulled into complacency. Sam showed her the barely visible trail that led to a ridge overlooking the cabin, explaining that Tom would keep watch from there. He pointed out the creek that could be followed downstream to another trail, and the dense thicket that could provide cover if they needed to hide. "You've thought of everything," Beatrice observed. "I try," Sam said, "though experience teaches that there's always something you don't anticipate." They paused at the edge of the clearing, looking back at the cabin. From this angle, it was almost completely hidden by trees, a perfect hiding place. "Sam," Beatrice began hesitantly, "if we succeed, if Harrington is arrested and his operation shut down, what will you do then?" He looked surprised by the question. "I haven't thought that far ahead." "Focus on the ranch, I suppose, build it up further." "Will you continue rescuing women from traffickers?" Sam considered this. "Perhaps, though without Harrington the worst of it might be dealt with, at least in this territory." "And what about?" Beatrice hesitated, unsure how to phrase her next question. "What about personal happiness? Family?" Something flickered in Sam's eyes, longing perhaps, or uncertainty. "I haven't thought much about that either. For a long time the fight has been everything." "But it doesn't have to be," Beatrice said softly. "Not forever." Sam turned to face her fully, and for a moment Beatrice thought he might reach for her. There was something in his expression of vulnerability, a question that made her heart race. But before he could speak, a shrill whistle cut through the air. "Signal from Tom," Sam said instantly, all business again. "Someone's coming." They hurried back to the cabin, where Joshua was already preparing for potential conflict, checking his rifle and positioning himself by the window. "How many?" Sam asked. "Tom signaled 3 riders," Joshua replied. "Coming from the east. Could be our men, could be Harrington's." "Get inside," Sam told Beatrice, drawing his own pistol. "Stay away from the windows." She complied, moving to the corner farthest from the door, but her heart pounded with anxiety rather than fear. If these were Harrington's men, the confrontation they had planned for might be happening sooner than expected. Minutes stretched like hours as they waited in tense silence. Then came another whistle, 3 short notes followed by a longer one. "It's our men," Sam said, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "That's Will's signal." True enough, moments later 3 riders appeared at the edge of the clearing. Will, whom Beatrice recognized from the ranch, and 2 men she hadn't met. Their expressions were grim as they dismounted and approached the cabin. Sam met them outside, with Joshua following. Beatrice watched through the window as the men conferred, their body language tense. She couldn't hear their words, but the way Sam's posture stiffened told her the news wasn't good. When they entered the cabin, Sam's face confirmed her fears. Harrington's office was empty, he reported. The ledgers, the correspondence, all gone. He must have moved everything after you escaped. Beatrice's heart sank. So we have no evidence. Not from that source, Will said. But we did learn something important. Harrington is organizing a major shipment, at least a dozen women coming in on tomorrow night's train to Council Grove. He's meeting his buyers at the old Stewart Mill just outside town. Sam's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. That's it then. We catch him in the act, with the women present and the buyers making the exchange. Not even the corrupt officials can ignore it. It's risky, Joshua pointed out. We'd be outnumbered. Not if we get word to the marshal, Sam countered. He's supposed to arrive in Council Grove today. Will shook his head. That's the other news. The marshal's been delayed, won't arrive until the day after tomorrow. A heavy silence fell over the room as they all absorbed the implications. Without the marshal, they had no official authority. Any action they took would be vigilante justice at best, criminal at worst. We can't wait, Sam finally said. Those women will be sold and scattered across the territory before the marshal arrives. We have to act tomorrow night. How? Beatrice asked. You said yourself we'd be outnumbered. Sam paced the small confines of the cabin, thinking aloud. We need to even the odds, create a diversion, perhaps. Something to split Harrington's forces. Or, Beatrice suggested slowly, we could use me as bait again, but this time deliberately. All eyes turned to her. Sam's expression darkened. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. Hear me out, Beatrice insisted. Harrington wants me back badly enough that he's committed men to searching for me. What if word reached him that I was hiding somewhere specific? Somewhere away from the mill. You want to draw his men away, Joshua realized. Yes, if he believes I've been located, he'll send men to recapture me. That would leave fewer defending the mill. Sam was already shaking his head. Too risky. If they caught you, they won't, Beatrice said with more confidence than she felt. Because I won't actually be there. We'll spread the rumor, set up a decoy, but I'll be with you at the mill. A tense silence followed her proposal. Sam looked torn between admiration and concern. It could work, he admitted reluctantly, but we'd need to be very careful about how we spread the information, make it believable but not too obvious. I have an idea about that, Will offered. There's a saloon girl in Council Grove who pretends to be loyal to Harrington, but has been feeding me information for months. If I tell her in confidence where Beatrice is hiding, she'll make sure it gets back to Harrington in a way that seems credible. Sam considered this, then looked at Beatrice. Are you sure about this? Once we set this in motion, there's no turning back. I'm sure, she said firmly. Those women deserve the same chance at freedom that you gave me. Something like pride flickered in Sam's eyes. All right then. Let's plan this properly. The next several hours were spent in intense preparation. Maps were studied, timing discussed, contingencies planned. The mill, it turned out, was an ideal location for their purpose, isolated enough for Harrington's illegal activities, but with multiple approaches that would allow Sam's men to surround it. Will would return to Council Grove to plant the false information and gather more men they could trust. Joshua would scout the mill to determine the best positions. Tom would remain with Beatrice and Sam at the cabin until it was time to move. As night fell again, the mood in the cabin was one of determined focus. Will and the two other men had departed hours earlier, leaving the original four alone once more. Tom took the first watch outside, while Joshua cleaned and checked their weapons. Beatrice found herself sitting with Sam by the fire again, both of them lost in thought. The plan they had devised was solid but dangerous. Success would mean freedom for the captive women and justice for Harrington. Failure could mean death or worse for all of them. Having second thoughts, Sam asked quietly, noticing her pensive expression. No, Beatrice replied honestly. I'm afraid yes, but not uncertain. This is the right thing to do. Sam nodded slowly. Fear is natural. As I said before, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action despite it. My father used to say something similar. Beatrice smiled at the memory. He was a minister, but during the war he served as a chaplain with the Union Army. He said he was never more frightened or more certain of his purpose. He sounds like a good man. He was. Beatrice looked into the fire, remembering. After my mother died when I was 12, it was just the two of us. He taught me everything: literature, mathematics, even some Latin. He wanted me to have opportunities he never had. He would be proud of you now, Sam said softly. Beatrice looked up, touched by his words. I hope so. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the fire crackling between them. Despite the danger that awaited them tomorrow, Beatrice felt a strange sense of rightness in this moment, as if all the twisted paths of her life had led her precisely here, to this cabin, to this man. Sam, she began hesitantly, after tomorrow, regardless of how things turn out, I want you to know that I'm grateful, not just for the rescue, but for treating me as an equal, for listening to my ideas and valuing my opinions. Sam's expression softened in a way she had rarely seen. You are an equal, Beatrice. In courage and determination, you match any man I've known. The sincerity in his voice warmed her more than the fire. On impulse, she reached across the space between them and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, strong and calloused from years of work, yet gentle in their touch. There's something I need to say, Sam continued, his voice lower now, something I've been feeling since, well, almost since I first saw you. Beatrice's heart quickened. Yes. But before Sam could continue, Joshua appeared in the doorway. Riders approaching, he reported tersely. At least 6 of them, moving fast. The moment shattered as Sam instantly shifted back into the role of protector and strategist. Harrington's men, he said grimly, releasing Beatrice's hand and standing. They've found us sooner than expected. How? Beatrice asked, rising as well. The cabin is well hidden. Doesn't matter now, Sam said, checking his pistol. Joshua, get Tom, we need to move fast. Where? Beatrice asked, already gathering her few belongings. There's a ravine about half a mile west. Good defensive position if it comes to a fight. Sam looked at her intently. But with luck, we can avoid them entirely. The night's on our side. Within minutes, they had extinguished the fire, gathered their essential supplies, and slipped out the back of the cabin. The horses, fortunately, had been kept in a small corral hidden among the trees rather than near the cabin itself. They mounted quickly, Sam helping Beatrice onto Daisy with urgent but gentle hands. Stay close to me, he whispered. And if I tell you to run, you run, no arguments. Beatrice nodded, too focused on the immediate danger to protest. They set off into the darkness, moving as quietly as possible through the trees. Behind them, Beatrice could hear the approaching riders, their voices carrying in the night air as they discovered the cabin. Someone's been here recently? Spread out, check the surroundings. They can't have gone far. Sam led them along the creek, using the running water to mask the sounds of their horses' hooves. They moved slowly at first, prioritizing stealth over speed until they were well away from the cabin. Then Sam signaled for them to pick up the pace. They rode through the darkness, guided only by starlight and Sam's intimate knowledge of the terrain. Beatrice clung to her saddle, her body sore from the previous day's riding but her mind sharp with adrenaline. Behind them, faint shouts indicated that their absence had been discovered, and the pursuit had begun in earnest. After what seemed like hours but was probably less than one, they reached the ravine Sam had mentioned. It cut deeply into the prairie, with steep sides and a narrow entrance that could be easily defended. At the bottom, a small stream provided water, and the walls offered protection from the wind and concealment from searching eyes. We'll rest the horses here, Sam decided after they had picked their way carefully down the sloping side. Joshua, take the high ground and keep watch. Tom, see to the horses. Beatrice and I will prepare what shelter we can. The night was growing colder, but they dared not light a fire. Instead, Sam and Beatrice arranged blankets in a protected alcove of the ravine wall. They would have to share body heat to stay warm, a necessity that, despite the circumstances, sent a flutter through Beatrice's stomach. You think they'll find us? She asked as they settled into their makeshift camp. Not tonight, Sam said confidently. The ravine is hard to spot unless you know it's here, and we left minimal tracks. By morning, we'll move again, head directly for Council Grove and the mill. But our plan, the diversion, has to change, Sam finished for her. But the core remains the same. We still stop the sale tomorrow night. Beatrice nodded, drawing her blanket closer against the chill. Despite her layers, she shivered, and Sam immediately shifted closer. May I? He asked, indicating his intention to put an arm around her. Please, she answered, grateful for both the warmth and the closeness as he pulled her against his side, wrapping his blanket around them both. For a time, they sat in silence, listening to the night sounds and the occasional report from Joshua or Tom. The danger surrounding them seemed to heighten every sensation. The solid strength of Sam's arm around her shoulders, the clean scent of him mingled with leather and prairie air, the steady rhythm of his breathing. You were about to tell me something, Beatrice said softly, remembering their interrupted moment by the fire. Before we had to leave the cabin. Sam was quiet for so long that Beatrice thought he might not answer. When he did, his voice was low and uncertain, so different from his usual confident tone. I was going to say that meeting you has changed something in me. After Sarah died, I thought I'd never. That is, I focused so completely on the work, on bringing men like Harrington to justice, that I closed myself off to anything else. Any other possibilities. Beatrice held her breath, hardly daring to hope he meant what she thought he did. But then there you were, Sam continued, his arm tightening slightly around her, standing in Harrington's office with a paperweight in your hand, ready to fight despite everything you'd been through, and I felt something I thought I'd never feel again. What was that? Beatrice asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sam turned slightly, meeting her eyes in the darkness. Hope, not just for justice, but for more. The word hung between them, full of possibility. Beatrice reached up slowly, her hand finding his cheek. I feel it too, she admitted. This connection between us, it makes no sense. We've known each other barely 2 days, and yet it feels like coming home, Sam finished for her. After years of wandering, their faces were close now, breaths mingling in the cold night air. Beatrice felt herself drawn toward him, all thoughts of danger temporarily forgotten in this moment of profound connection. When their lips finally met, it was gentle at first, a question, an offering then deepening as they both surrendered to feelings that had been building since that first meeting. Sam's hand cradled the back of her head, strong fingers tangling in her hair as he drew her closer. Beatrice responded with equal fervor, pouring into the kiss all the gratitude, admiration, and emerging love she felt for this remarkable man. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Sam rested his forehead against hers. I didn't plan for this, he said softly. For you, the best things in life rarely go according to plan, Beatrice replied with a small smile, or so my father always said. Sam chuckled, the sound warm and intimate in the darkness. Your father sounds wiser by the minute. He would have liked you, Beatrice said with certainty. He valued honesty and courage above all things. They settled back against the ravine wall, now holding each other more purposefully. Despite the danger still pursuing them, Beatrice felt a profound sense of peace. Whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together. We should try to sleep, Sam suggested. Tomorrow will demand all our strength. Beatrice nodded, nestling closer into his embrace. Wake me if you need to, she said. Though her eyes were already growing heavy, Sam pressed a kiss to her forehead. Sleep now, I've got you. With his strong arms around her and the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear, Beatrice drifted into sleep, secure in the knowledge that she had found not just a protector, but a partner, someone who saw her as she truly was and valued her for it. The morning brought new challenges and confirmations of their changing plans. Joshua, returning from his watch, reported that Harrington's men had continued their search through the night, gradually widening their radius from the cabin. They're persistent, he noted grimly. And there are more of them now, at least a dozen that I counted. Sam nodded, his expression serious as he studied the map spread before them. They know we're still in the area. We need to move quickly, reach Council Grove before they can cut us off. What about Will and the others? Tom asked. They'll be expecting us to follow the original plan. Will is smart, Sam replied. When he doesn't find us at the cabin, he'll know to meet us at our fallback location in town. He turned to Beatrice, who was helping pack their meager supplies. The journey will be hard and fast. Are you up for it? Yes, she said without hesitation. What about our plan for the mill? We adapt, Sam said simply. Instead of splitting Harrington's forces beforehand, we'll have to create a diversion at the mill itself. It's riskier, but still possible. They set out as soon as the horses were ready, taking a different route than planned, one that would keep them away from the likely paths of Harrington's search parties. The day was clear but cool, the autumn sun providing light without excessive heat as they rode across the rolling prairie. Beatrice found herself watching Sam as he led their small group, admiring the way he read the land and made decisions with confident efficiency. Last night's intimacy had changed something between them, creating a bond that felt both new and somehow ancient, as if they had known each other in some previous life. They stopped briefly at midday to rest the horses and eat a cold meal of jerky and hardtack. Sam took the opportunity to refine their new plan with Joshua and Tom, using a stick to draw in the dirt. The mill has 3 main entrances, he explained, indicating each point. The front facing the road, the loading dock at the back, and the side door where the workers used to enter. Harrington will likely post men at each. How many men total do you think he'll have? Joshua asked. Based on previous operations, probably 10 to 12, Sam estimated. Plus the buyers, maybe another 5 or 6. And we'll have us 4, plus Will and the 3 men he was gathering in town, possibly 1 or 2 more if he's been successful. So we're still outnumbered, Tom observed. Yes, but we have surprise and better positions, Sam countered. And one more advantage, Beatrice. She looked up in surprise. Me. How am I an advantage? Sam's expression was both serious and admiring. Because Harrington and his men will be looking for you. They won't expect you to walk right into their operation. Understanding dawned. You want me to create the diversion. Only if you're willing, Sam said quickly. It would be dangerous, but potentially very effective. Beatrice considered the proposal, her mind working through the possibilities and risks. What exactly would I need to do? Sam outlined his idea. Beatrice would approach the mill openly, making herself visible to Harrington's lookouts. While his men were distracted by her unexpected appearance, Sam and the others would move into position and then strike when the buyers and the captive women were present, catching Harrington in the act. The key is timing, Sam emphasized. You would need to appear just as the buyers arrive, but before any exchange takes place. I can do that, Beatrice said with more confidence than she felt. Sam studied her face. Are you certain? This puts you at even greater risk than before. I'm certain, she replied firmly. If it helps save those women, the risk is worth it. Pride and something deeper shone in Sam's eyes. Then we have our plan. Let's get to Council Grove. They resumed their journey, pushing the horses harder now that time was becoming critical. By late afternoon, they could see the town in the distance, a collection of buildings nestled in a bend of the Neosho River, with the old mill standing slightly apart, its water wheel long since stilled. They approached cautiously, using a stand of trees for cover as they observed the town and the mill beyond. There was no obvious sign of Harrington's men, but that meant little. They would be positioned discreetly until the transaction began. We'll make camp here until dark, Sam decided. We'll nose to look for us in this area. As the sun began to set, turning the prairie gold and then deepening to purple, Will indeed found them bringing with him not 3 but 5 additional men, all former lawmen with personal reasons to want Harrington brought down. Word is Harrington's jumpy, Will reported after introductions had been made. Your escape has him on edge, Miss Nielsen. He's worried about his reputation if he can't control his merchandise. Good, Beatrice said with grim satisfaction. Let him worry. The train arrives at 8, Will continued. The women will be transported to the mill immediately. Buyers are scheduled to arrive by 9, Sam nodded. Then we move at 8:30. Will, you and your men take positions around the mill. Joshua and Tom, you'll come with Beatrice and me. We approach from the east, where the trees provide cover almost to the building. As full darkness fell, they made their final preparations. The men checked weapons and exchanged quiet words of encouragement. Sam took Beatrice aside, his expression serious in the fading light. "You can still change your mind," he said softly. "No one would think less of you." Beatrice shook her head. "I'm committed to this, Sam. Those women deserve a chance at freedom, just as I had." Sam's hands came up to frame her face, his touch gentle despite the calluses on his palms. "You are the bravest person I know, Beatrice Nielsen." "Not brave," she corrected him, "just doing what's right." Sam smiled slightly. "That's the definition of bravery." He leaned down and kissed her, not with the tentative exploration of the previous night, but with a deep certainty that conveyed everything he couldn't say in words. When they parted, his eyes held hers intently. "When this is over, we need to talk about the future." Beatrice's heart leaped at his words. "Yes," she agreed. "We do." Then it was time to move. They mounted up and rode toward the mill, keeping to shadows and gullies where possible. As they drew closer, they could see lights in the mill windows, Harrington's men preparing for the night's business. They left the horses in a small grove about a quarter-mile from the mill, proceeding on foot. Will and his men spread out, taking their assigned positions around the building. Sam, Beatrice, Joshua, and Tom crept through the trees until they had a clear view of the east side of the mill, including the main entrance. "The trains arrived," Joshua reported, hearing the distant whistle. "Not long now." Sure enough, within 20 minutes, 2 wagons approached the mill from the direction of town. Even from their position, Beatrice could see that the wagons carried women, huddled together under guard. "Just like when they brought me in," she whispered, anger and determination hardening her resolve. Sam squeezed her hand briefly. "This is it. Remember, you approach only after they've brought the women inside, but before the buyers arrive. Your appearance will distract Harrington and his men, giving us time to move into position." Beatrice nodded, her throat suddenly dry with nervous anticipation. "Be careful," she said to Sam. "You too," he replied, his eyes conveying far more than the simple words. They watched as the women were unloaded from the wagons and herded into the mill. Harrington himself appeared at the door, directing his men with sharp gestures. Even from a distance, his arrogance was palpable. "Now," Sam said softly after the wagons had departed, "it's time." Beatrice took a deep breath, straightened her borrowed dress, and stepped out of the trees. She walked directly toward the mill, making no attempt at stealth. Her heart pounded, but her steps were steady. This was for all the women like her, those who had been saved and those who still needed saving. She was about 50 yards from the entrance when one of Harrington's lookouts spotted her. She heard his shout of surprise, then watched as men appeared at various points around the mill, their attention fixed on her unexpected approach. Harrington himself emerged from the main door, his expression shifting from confusion to delighted triumph as he recognized her. "Well, well," he called out. "The runaway returns. How convenient." Beatrice continued walking steadily forward, buying time for Sam and the others to move into position. "I'm not returning," she called back. "I'm here to stop you." Harrington laughed, the sound ugly and confident. "One woman against all my men. I admire your spirit, girl, but you're outnumbered and outmatched." "Am I?" Beatrice replied, coming to a stop about 20 feet from him. She could see his men moving to surround her, but she held her ground. "Look around you, Harrington. This is the end of your operation." For a brief moment, uncertainty flashed across his face. Then a wagon approached from the town, the buyers arriving for their transaction. Harrington's confidence returned. "Take her inside," he ordered 2 of his men. "We'll deal with her after our business is concluded." As the men moved toward her, the signal came 3 short whistles from different directions around the mill. Instantly, Sam and his men emerged from their positions, weapons drawn. "It's over, Harrington," Sam shouted, moving quickly to Beatrice's side. "Tell your men to drop their weapons." Confusion erupted as Harrington's men realized they were surrounded. Some immediately raised their hands in surrender, while others reached for their guns. Shots rang out, and Beatrice found herself pulled behind Sam as he returned fire. The buyer's wagon halted abruptly, its occupants leaping down to take cover. Harrington himself stood frozen for a moment, then made a dash for the side door of the mill. Sam saw him and moved to intercept, but one of Harrington's loyal men blocked his path. "Beatrice, stay down," Sam shouted as he engaged with Harrington's man. But Beatrice saw Harrington disappearing into the mill where the captive women were being held. Without hesitation, she darted forward, slipping past the fighting men and into the building. Inside, the old mill was dimly lit by lanterns. Machinery long silent cast strange shadows on the walls. Beatrice paused, listening, and heard movement from the upper floor. She found the stairs and climbed cautiously, her heart racing. On the second floor, she discovered the captive women, a dozen or more, bound and terrified, huddled in a large open area that had once held grain. And standing over them, pistol in hand, was Harrington. "Not another step," he warned as Beatrice appeared at the top of the stairs, "or I start shooting these valuable commodities." Beatrice froze, assessing the situation. Behind Harrington was a window, and beyond that, she could see the water tower that had once powered the mill's wheel. An idea formed. "You can't escape, Harrington," she said, keeping her voice calm. "Sam and his men have the mill surrounded. The territorial marshal is on his way." "The marshal is a day's ride away," Harrington sneered. "By then, I'll be long gone with you as insurance." He gestured with his pistol for her to move closer. Beatrice complied but angled her path to keep Harrington turning, his back gradually moving toward the window. "You're finished in Kansas," she told him. "Even if you escape today, everyone will know what you've done. These women will testify against you." "These women won't say a word if they know what's good for them," Harrington growled. "And neither will you." He lunged suddenly, grabbing Beatrice's arm with his free hand while keeping the pistol trained on the captive women. "We're leaving," he said. "Together. You're worth more to me alive, but don't test my patience." Beatrice allowed herself to be pulled toward the stairs, waiting for her moment. It came when a renewed burst of gunfire outside momentarily distracted Harrington. With all her strength, she twisted in his grip and shoved him backward directly toward the window. The old glass shattered as Harrington crashed through it, his surprised shout cut short as he fell. Beatrice rushed to the broken window and saw him land on the platform of the water tower, momentarily stunned but already starting to rise. "Stay there," she shouted to the captive women. "Help is coming." Then she was running back down the stairs, determined to ensure Harrington didn't escape. Outside, the gunfire had largely ceased. Most of Harrington's men were subdued or had fled, and Sam was directing his men to secure the buyers, who had surrendered when they realized their transaction was exposed. "Harrington," Beatrice called out as she emerged from the mill. "He's on the water tower platform." Sam turned instantly, spotting the figure now climbing down the tower's ladder. "Joshua, Tom with me," he commanded then to Will. "Get those women out safely." Beatrice watched as Sam and his men raced toward the water tower, cutting off Harrington's escape route. The trafficker, seeing himself cornered, turned desperately, looking for any way out. Finding none, he raised his pistol, aiming at Sam. "No," Beatrice screamed, but her warning was unnecessary. Sam had already anticipated Harrington's move. His own shot came first, striking Harrington in the shoulder and sending his pistol flying. The trafficker staggered but remained standing, hatred contorting his features. "It's over, Harrington," Sam said, approaching cautiously with his gun still trained on the wounded man. "You're going to face justice for everything you've done." "Justice," Harrington spat. "In this territory, I own half the judges from here to Topeka." "Not the federal judge who'll try you for human trafficking," Sam replied grimly. "And not the territorial marshal who'll be here tomorrow." Joshua moved forward to secure Harrington, binding his wounded shoulder before tying his hands. The once powerful trafficker seemed diminished, somehow his arrogance replaced by the desperate rage of a cornered animal. Beatrice approached Sam, who immediately pulled her into a fierce embrace. "When I saw you run into the mill after him," he murmured against her hair, "I nearly died of fear." "I knew what I was doing," she assured him, drawing back to look at his face. "I couldn't let him threaten those women." Sam shook his head in wonder. "You continue to amaze me, Beatrice Nielsen." Around them, order was gradually being restored. The captive women were being led from the mill, some weeping with relief, others still too shocked to fully comprehend their rescue. Will and his men had rounded up the buyers and the remaining members of Harrington's crew. "What happens now?" Beatrice asked as they watched. We secure the prisoners in the town jail until the marshal arrives, Sam explained. Will's already sent a rider to meet him on the road with news of what's happened here. After that, it's up to the courts. Will they be convicted? Truly, Sam's expression was determined. With the evidence we've gathered, and the testimony of the women, yes. Harrington's influence runs deep in the territory, but not deep enough to overcome federal charges of human trafficking. As the night progressed, they worked to settle the rescued women in the town's small hotel, where the sympathetic owner provided rooms and hot meals. Many were immigrants who spoke little English, their confusion and fear palpable despite the language barrier. Beatrice moved among them, offering comfort and explanations as best she could. "You're good with them," Sam observed as she rejoined him in the hotel lobby after helping the last woman settle in. "They need to know they're safe," Beatrice replied simply. "That what happened to them wasn't their fault and they have choices now." Sam nodded, understanding in his eyes. "The marshal should arrive by tomorrow afternoon. After he takes statements, they'll be free to decide their own paths. Some may want to return home, others might prefer to stay in the territory. They'll need support either way," Beatrice said thoughtfully. "A place to stay while they recover, perhaps assistance finding legitimate work." Sam smiled slightly. "You're already planning how to help them." "Someone should," she replied. Then, more hesitantly, "Sam, you mentioned talking about the future when this was over." His expression softened and he took her hand, leading her to a quiet corner of the lobby where they could speak privately. "I did. What did you have in mind?" Beatrice asked, her heart suddenly racing with anticipation. Sam took both her hands in his touch gentle but sure. "When I found you in Harrington's office 2 days ago, I was a man with a single purpose, bringing down men like him, avenging what happened to my sister. I didn't think beyond that mission." He paused, his blue eyes holding hers intently. "But meeting you changed everything. You showed me there could be more to life than vengeance and justice. There could be hope, and a future worth building." Beatrice felt tears prick at her eyes, though whether from joy or the emotional aftermath of their ordeal, she couldn't say. "What kind of future?" she whispered. "When we build together," Sam replied simply. "I know it's soon, impossibly soon by most standards. But these past days have shown me who you are, Beatrice. Your courage, your compassion, your determination. I don't want to waste another day wondering what might be possible between us." He took a deep breath, then continued. "The settlement north of my ranch still needs a teacher, and I need a partner in all things." Beatrice's breath caught as she understood what he was asking. "Samuel Vaughn, are you proposing marriage to a woman you've known for 2 days?" A smile the fullest, most unguarded she'd yet seen from him spread across his face. "I believe I am. Though I'd understand completely if you thought it too soon." Too impulsive, Beatrice stopped his words with a finger to his lips. "When my father died, and I decided to come west, he left me a letter. In it, he wrote that life rarely follows our careful plans, and that true happiness often comes from recognizing and embracing the unexpected gifts that cross our path." She moved her hand to cup his cheek, feeling the roughness of his beard against her palm. "You, Sam, are the most unexpected and precious gift I could have imagined. A man who risked everything to save a stranger, who sees me as an equal and values my mind as well as my heart." Sam turned his head slightly to press a kiss to her palm. "Is that a yes?" he asked, hope evident in his voice. "It's a yes," Beatrice confirmed, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "On one condition. Name it. That we use whatever influence we gain from bringing down Harrington to establish a proper sanctuary, a place where women like those upstairs can find safety and rebuild their lives." Sam nodded without hesitation. "I've been thinking the same. The ranch has plenty of land, and with Harrington gone, there will be others ready to take his place unless we create alternatives." "Then yes, Samuel Vaughn," Beatrice said, leaning forward until their foreheads touched. "I will marry you and build that future together." Their kiss sealed the promise, tender at first, then deepening with the certainty of their commitment to each other and the path they would walk together. The territorial marshal arrived the following day, bringing with him federal agents specifically tasked with combating human trafficking. The evidence against Harrington and his buyers was overwhelming. and the testimony of the rescued women, those willing and able to speak, damning. Harrington himself remained defiant, threatening and blustering even as he was transported to Topeka for trial. But his threats rang hollow now, his power base crumbling as news of his arrest spread throughout the territory. 2 weeks later, Beatrice stood on the porch of Sam's ranch house, their ranch house, now watching as workers constructed a new building on the eastern edge of the property. It would be the first of several structures comprising the sanctuary they had envisioned, a place where women rescued from situations like Beatrice's could heal and rebuild their lives. 6 of the women from the mill had already accepted their offer of sanctuary, with more expected as word spread. The settlement to the north had eagerly welcomed Beatrice as their new teacher, and plans for a proper schoolhouse were underway. Sam came to stand beside her, his arms slipping comfortably around her waist. "What are you thinking?" he asked, following her gaze to the construction site. "That sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best," she replied honestly. "If I hadn't been sold at that auction, if you hadn't come for me at Dusk, we might never have met," Sam finished for her, "though I like to think our paths would have crossed eventually. Some things just seem destined." Beatrice leaned into him, savoring the solid warmth of his presence. "My practical, logical cowboy talking about destiny," Sam chuckled, the sound rumbling pleasantly against her side. "You've changed me in many ways, Beatrice Vaughn." The name, her new name since their quiet wedding the previous week, still brought a thrill of joy. "As you've changed me," she acknowledged. "For the better, I think." "Definitely for the better," Sam agreed, turning to face her fully. His hands came up to frame her face, his expression serious but tender. "I used to think my purpose was vengeance. You showed me it's actually healing, helping others find the same freedom and safety you found." Beatrice rose on tiptoes to press a kiss to his lips. "We'll do it together," she promised, "every step of the way." As the sun began to set over the prairie, painting the sky in the same rosy hues that had witnessed Beatrice's darkest moment, she and Sam stood together, arms entwined, watching the light change. What had begun in the despair of dawn had transformed into a love and purpose that would guide them through all the dusks and dawns to come, a future built on courage, compassion, and the unshakable bond between 2 souls who had found each other against all odds. And in the years that followed, as their sanctuary grew and their family expanded to include children of their own, Beatrice would often think back to that fateful day, sold at dawn, found at dusk, and between those moments, the beginning of a love story that would last a lifetime.